I now want to introduce our commencement speaker for this evening. George Selim works for the National Security Council at the White House. He currently serves as the first director for National Security Affairs and Community Partnerships at the White House National Security Council staff. This new office, created in January of 2012, is focused on policy development for building partnerships to address a range of national security priorities, to include launching the recent White House Summit on countering violent extremism. George has just over a decade of federal service, including serving as the senior policy advisor at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, where he advised the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and senior leadership on policy issues at the intersection of civil liberties and homeland security. Mr. Selim started his government service at the U.S. Department of Justice, where he worked on conflict resolution and mediation matters. He's also worked as a community organizer for the Arab American Institute just after 9/11 and completed 1 year of AmeriCorps service, community service. I'll break a little now from the script. I'll rejoin it in a second. Just want to say that I met George in freshman algebra class here at Holy Name High School. I also was defensive coordinator of the football team George's senior year. George is a great guy, and he's hosted our AP government and history classes on their trip to Washington, where we go right to the White House, and George has a program where they're introduced to people that are on the cutting edge of what's going on in society. Very briefly, this last year when we were down there, yeah. Our kids were absolutely fantastic. They were asking questions on tracking ISIS on the internet, how ISIS communicates with each other, tries to recruit new members in Europe and America, and George and his colleague were just, the level of questioning and dialogue was unsurpassed. It was first-rate high school education. To have them there meeting these people and talking about these issues was fantastic. Back to the script. George is a recipient of the 2013 National Security Council Senior Director Award for Outstanding Service. He was named the Washington Post Federal Player of the Week in March of 2009. He received the 2008 Department of Homeland Security Secretary's Award for Excellence, as well as the 2006 Department of Justice Meritorious Service Award. George graduated from Walsh University in Canton, Ohio in 2001 with a bachelor's degree in sociology, where he also played football for 3 years, and went on to earn a master's degree in public policy from Georgetown University. Most proudly, George is a Parma native and a 1998 graduate of Holy Name High School, where he played football and served on student government. Mr. George Selim.
That was an introduction. Actually, any introduction Mr. Farmer gives is an introduction, so thank you, Mr. Farmer. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Yeah, everyone's thinking to themselves, how long is this guy gonna go? Tip-off's at 8:30. I may have graduated a while ago, but I still keep tuned into the dynamics. The National Security Council is not removed from the NBA, the Eastern Conference NBA playoff semifinals, so it's not lost on me. I can promise you that. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here tonight. Great to be home tonight. Thanks again, Mr. Farmer, for the very kind introduction and for inviting me to come back this year as the commencement speaker. It's truly an honor to be here and to be back home here in Parma tonight. With a lot of friends and family, and seeing a lot of acquaintances here, and teachers that I had from Holy Name, guidance counselors, mentors, and so on, coaches. Really great to be back home tonight. Let me start by acknowledging many of the people who worked long and hard to make this evening possible. Obviously, Mr. Farmer, Principal Blanc, Ms. Carter, Ms. Megan Slonida, who I don't think is here tonight, but was instrumental in helping get some of the trips out to Washington, D.C., your guidance counselors, and And thinking back on my Holy Name days, there's unsung heroes who contributed to your 4 years. Those unsung heroes assumed the title of the cafeteria staff, who you seniors have gotten to know and love intimately well. The maintenance crew that worked at your high school, the bus drivers, many of which who took you to and from school every day, and everyone else who contributed to your 4 years in some small way to get you through it. I know you talked with them when I was a graduating senior. I spent a lot of time thinking about the administrative staff at school that I spent a lot of time getting to know and formed great relationships with. Those people were instrumental in you getting here today. They're just as important as many of the teachers and faculty, and they deserve your thanks and appreciation as well. Let me also take in a moment to express my love and appreciation to my family who was able to join me tonight. My wife, Linda, and my 9-week-old son, who, if you hear him squealing in the back, he's a tall little guy, probably like his dad, but he's in the back. My mother, my cousin, and some other relatives here today. I appreciate their support. They're not Holy Name grads, but they're not afraid to put on the green and white when and if asked to. So next time the Holy Name football team's in the state championship, everyone in my extended family will be wearing green and white. I can promise you that. So some of the graduates here tonight I've personally met a number of you who have been out to some trips to Washington, D.C. I came back a few years ago, talked with the football team, spoke at a few classes. So over the course of your 4 years, I've gotten to know a couple of you individually. And for those of you that came to Washington, D.C. and, as Mr. Farmer pointed out, asked the questions about ISIL recruitment and online radicalization, I'm going to save your name from tonight's speech, and I'll be meeting with you afterwards to talk about some of those questions and some of the follow-up we've been doing. So I'll put that a hold for a second. But when I look at the senior class tonight, and when I look at the men, and when I look at the young ladies, I see a lot of myself, because I was sitting in your seats 17 years ago. I sat in your seats. I walked in your footsteps. I ate the tater tots in the cafeteria that you ate in for 4 years. Maybe not the same tater tots, but I think you get the point. I walked the halls of Holy Name as you did. I rigged my locker so I could open it up quicker during classes, if people still do that. I remember doing that distinctly well. I played football at Holy Name. I rode many a yellow school bus to and from away games. I enjoyed sports victories and the sorrows of defeat. I know the awkwardness of asking someone to homecoming or prom, and I know the social humility that comes with that perceived answer of, well, George, I don't think so. I think I'm already going with someone, or sorry, I don't think so. So for you seniors sitting there thinking, what's this guy going to tell me, and am I going to get the tip off in time? I've been there, I've done that. I was in the exact same place, in the exact same frame of mind that you were for the past 4 years and that you're going through tonight. Senior year football, I still remember losing to Padua. That same year, I remember getting pummeled by Lake Catholic. I remember walking off the field at Byers Field. I remember how it felt. I remember how quiet that bus ride was home that Saturday night. That might seem like a long time ago, but to me, those memories are still vivid. Part of the reason I'm so honored to share this commencement with you tonight is because I've personally experienced a version of the past 4 years that you're here contemplating tonight, of what just happened in the past 4 years, and am I about to get this degree? And now have the opportunity to share some of the lessons I've learned from the past 17 years since I sat in these exact same seats on commencement night in 1998 for the Holy Name High School graduating class. One of the things that I thought a lot about this past year that's relevant to this speech tonight actually has nothing to do with Holy Name, my work at the White House, or any of the national security matters that consume most of my waking minutes every day. The event and the quote that I've thought a lot about in the past year or so was actually on the cover of the July 12th, 2014 cover of The Plain Dealer. Does anyone remember the July 12th cover of The Plain Dealer? I have it pinned up in my office. Well, let me tell you what was on the cover of that Plain Dealer, and I think it'll sound familiar. That was the edition that announced LeBron's coming home to Cleveland. Regardless of how you feel about LeBron or the Cavs, or any bitterness from the decision, there's a certain sentiment on the front page of that Plain Dealer and its center announcement that rings true for how I think about Cleveland, my hometown of Parma, Ohio, and the Holy Name High School graduating class tonight. The Plain Dealer ran this quote with LeBron holding his arms up. The headline said home. This quote was underneath LeBron's welcome home. It said, in Northeast Ohio, and this is a quote from LeBron, in Northeast Ohio, Nothing is given. Everything is earned. You have to work for what you have, and I'm ready to accept that challenge. I'm coming home. I thought about that a lot because there's a lot of jockeying in my office with Steelers fans and other sports rivalries, so I made sure my mom gave me about 20 copies of that Plain Dealer, and I passed them out around the office, down the halls of the White House. They're there today, I swear. They're hanging in the halls. I've thought a lot about the first half of that quote that says, in Northeast Ohio, nothing is given, everything is earned. You have to work for what you have. When I think about this quote, it rings true not only for me and my career, but also for my family and my parents who immigrated to Northeast Ohio from Cairo, Egypt in 1971, who worked long and hard in their blue-collar jobs to sacrifice and put aside enough savings to send their kids to Catholic schools like St. Bridget's and Holy Name High School. My parents probably aren't much different from many of the parents and families who are sitting in the back tonight. Many of the parents may have hit the same points in the place in the continuum that my parents hit when thinking through, how are we going to pay for this tuition at Holy Name? It's not the cheapest in Parma. You probably may have thought about, do I need to take this second job or do I need to dip into savings? But you knew all along that you wanted to put your kids in a position where they could get a great high school education and be well prepared for the next chapter of their life. And for that, parents, I thank you for your sacrifices. I think LeBron hit it right on when he said, you have to work for what you have, even if you're an NBA superstar and a sports phenom. You sitting here tonight, senior class, is a reflection of that, because I know you're earning this diploma isn't something that happened by accident. Each of you has earned it. I know it wasn't easy. It required lots of late nights, lots of cramming, lots of time on Wikipedia and thinking, can I get away with cut and paste and all those fun things? Yeah, you didn't think I knew that, did you? At the end of the day, your teachers push you, your coaches push you, your friends and your families push you. You've earned it here tonight. That's not lost on me, and that's not lost on any of your teachers who have the joy of giving you this degree tonight. Parents, for your sacrifice, for your hard work, and for your commitment to a top quality education for your kids, even if you don't hear it from your kids. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for keeping your kids in Holy Name and for making sure that they came out ahead of it tonight. Senior class, give your parents a round of applause. I can guarantee you that my parents, and my mom is sitting right over here, you can ask her for yourself. When I was at my commencement night in 1998, I had the class rank. You ready for this? My class rank of my class was 151 of 301 graduates. I was dead center in my class rank. And my parents never thought in a million years that I'd be back tonight, a little bit thinner and a little bit grayer in the hairline, here to give you some advice about what my professional career and some of the personal obstacles I've overcome have put me in a position to impart a few words of wisdom here on you tonight. Now, these principles or virtues that I want to tell you a little bit about aren't anything scientific or incredibly philosophical, but when I think back on my personal and professional obstacles that have been overcome, there are three things that stand out more than any. And the things I'm about to share with you, I don't want to do so in a way that I'm just telling you about my speech. I'm working hard to get you out of here by tip-off, and so I want you to work with me a little bit. This is going to be a learning exercise here. There are three core principles or virtues that have lasted true for me for the past 17 years. And here they are. They're about setting goals, they're about working hard, and they're about showing compassion. Senior class, I want you to say those three things with me. When I say set goals, I want you to say set goals. When I say work hard, I want you to say work hard. And when I say show compassion, you get the picture. So I'm going to talk about setting goals. Work hard. Show compassion. There you go. We're moving quick. We're moving here. On setting goals, it's an often underappreciated fact, but experts say that you're 90% more likely to achieve your goals just if you write them down. Can you believe that? Think about that for a second. You're 90% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. This is a great fact I discovered my freshman year of college, and I've been putting it to use ever since. For example, when I first moved to Washington, D.C., just a few months after 9/11 in January of 2002, I distinctly remember walking down Pennsylvania Avenue and standing in front of the gates at the White House and looking in. I was a tourist at the time. And I remember saying to myself, there are a lot of busy, really important looking people walking around behind that gate. And one of these days, I want to be on the other side of that gate. Not as a tourist, but one of those people who look busy and really important, doing an important job. And I've had the honor to host a couple of classes now that have come through and have been on the other side of that gate. And part of setting goals, or the theme of setting goals that's so important, is that as you think about this, you see the act of setting a goal for yourself isn't just creating a wish list. Instead, you're giving yourself a goal to help ensure you have something to measure against. Incremental progress counts. Each day, each week, each month, every step or victory along the way counts toward fulfilling a vision for your life, as I had for mine, that each of you can chart in whichever course your life will take you. Many of you may have heard a popular saying, if you've heard this before, there's a popular saying that goes, "The devil is in the details." You may have heard that at some point. Well, freshman year at Holy Name, I had an amazing freshman football coach. His name was Mr. Joseph Airbar, and he was also my freshman history teacher as well. One of the things that I distinctly remember about my freshman year and playing football for Mr. Airbar was that he had a flip side to that saying. Mr. Airbar's saying was not that the devil's in the details. Mr. Airbar used to say that God is in the details, and taught us to pay attention in a very incremental way to the steps we take as athletes, or to the words we put down on paper, or the marks we choose in a test or in his class. I much prefer the version of Mr. Airbar saying, which is God is in the details, which is implying that even the small things we do on a day-to-day basis, our attention to detail is so important, even in my line of work of national security affairs. As you think about the goals for each of your own personal life, let me leave two imparting thoughts on you. First, life is an equalizer, giving us each an opportunity to compete. If you are living and breathing, regardless of your handicap, regardless of your disability, regardless of your insecurities on any issues, you each have the ability to achieve the goals that you set forth for yourself. And I encourage you, if it's not today, it's sometime soon, put those goals down on paper. Second, on achieving your goals, put down your phones. I don't mean literally at this moment, stop trying to check scores or stats. Many of us, myself included, spend a lot of time with our face in the phone on a day-to-day basis. Parents, you know what I'm talking about, in the iPad, in the tablet, in the laptops. There's a certain uniqueness that I think is missing today from my graduating class, and that's as simple as talking to people, asking questions, getting to know one another. Part of the aspect of getting to know everyone is that you don't do so via text or email or out of reading about it on some blog. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by how willing people are to talk to you about their jobs, their careers, where they went to school, why they chose a particular academic institution or another, why they moved to one city or another. My advice to you on setting goals is really twofold. Number one, put them down on paper. Life is an equalizer. You can achieve those. But second, get off the electronic world at some point and come back to the human world where you talk to people and you learn stuff and you understand how people feel, talk, and react when you say or do certain things. The second theme, working hard. Senior, say it with me again. Work hard. Thinking back to the quote from LeBron James that nothing is given, everything is earned, let me define for you what I think hard work is in a real simple way. Hard work is when at the end of the day, whatever time it is, at the end of the day when you climb into bed, you are utterly and completely exhausted. You are mentally spent, you are physically burnt, and you are emotionally drained. Today is the era of the hacker for all intents and purposes, which means that someone is always trying to find a workaround or a backdoor in. The obsession to do things faster and cheaper is consummate in our society. While I'm all for innovation and ingenuity, there's no lack of shortcuts for spending a full day of school and having the type of sports, band, or club schedule that each of you has gone through, coming home, cutting grass, doing yard work, taking out the trash, and then sitting down for 2 or more hours of schoolwork every night. That's the type of hard work that you all are leaving Holy Name with tonight. There's no replacement for it, and as you embark on the next chapter of your life, remember that your ability to put in the hours, to work harder than others, will distinguish you to your future teachers, professors, and definitely to your employers, and it has for me. I've learned it firsthand. 2 observations on working hard to move forward. When you think about how hard you've worked to maintain your grades, your reputation, and the respect of your friends and family, remember that people in your life are like stocks. They can be both assets and they can be liabilities. Some of your friends and peers are like a great stock. You can't get enough of them and you always want more. But some of the friends and acquaintances you may have made over the past 4 years, well, let's just say when it comes to your hard work and what you've achieved and what you've earned, they may be more of a liability. Stay clear of these types of people in your life, and the sooner you can do so, the better. The second part on working hard is you're the graduating class of 15. Your attitude can and should be that every goal is achievable that you can set forth. You'll likely be the class that will be driving hydrogen cars in the near future, finding a cure for cancer, and so on. Approach each academic and professional endeavor as an opportunity to outwork your peers. You may not always be the smartest one in the room, but the lesson that I've taken away from growing up in Northeast Ohio is that you can always be the hardest working person in the room. And the last of my key three themes to share with you tonight is about showing compassion. We mostly understand compassion as, senior class, your friends at Wikipedia define as a response to the suffering of others that motivates a desire to help. But what is the practical application of compassion? And what does it mean for us today? As I've seen firsthand in the past 15 years, compassion, in a real example, is the men and women of the armed forces who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, other parts of the world, and in some cases given the ultimate sacrifice. Compassion, as I've come to learn it, and I've come to see it up close and personal, is defined as selflessness and humility that comes with service. And service comes in all forms. Service isn't only defined as wearing a uniform or carrying a gun and badge. Service also comes in the form of a mom who comforts a crying child in the middle of the night when she has to get up early and go to work the next day. Service is also the dad who chooses to work the night shift at the Ford or Chevy plant down the road on Brook Park here to make a few extra dollars to support his or her family. Service is the working parent who drops off the kids at grandma or grandpa's house because childcare may be too expensive and you want to put your kids in a familiar setting. Those types of service and those types of actions, those count too. Those are service that are meaningful in each of our lives. But they're not the kind that get awards or profiled on nightly news. The latter types of service place compassion for others first and ultimately are the fabric that tie communities like the Holy Name community together. Two observations on showing compassion. The first is invest in the people around you. Find little ways to make your neighborhoods, your schools, your circle of friends better in some small way. When you accept that personal responsibility comes with being a contributing member of society, the question you will continue to ask yourself is, what else can I do to make my place and my circle better? The second point is, and this is really my public service pitch here, is to choose a career in public service. There are millions of jobs and professions out there that at some point over the next 4 years you'll think about, maybe even for a split second. I urge you to think long and hard about considering a career in public service and exploring opportunities in any branch of the military or finding a career in a federal agency as I did, where your skills and talents can really be put to use. The reality about careers in the federal government is that any branch of the military or federal agency you choose needs to have representatives of the communities in which they serve. I'm proud to serve at the federal level from Northeast Ohio, from the Parma and Holy Name communities. And if you all choose a career in the military and federal public service, you all have a chance to represent your community in that same way. Keep public service at the forefront of your career options. And I can promise you from firsthand experience, you won't find a more fulfilling career ever. The last thing I'll say about public service is that your country needs you, graduating seniors, now more than ever. Your communities, like here in Northeast Ohio, need you now more than ever. And as I've seen over the past 17 years, your alma mater will continue to come and need you for investments of your time, emotion, and capital down the road. So let's recap here. We talked about setting goals, we talked about working hard, and we talked about showing compassion. Let's say those three one more time. We talked about, we talked about, and we talked about, there we go. We're almost done. Home stretch right now. It's getting started. When I'm home in Parma over Christmas break or other weekends throughout the year, I get one question the most when people ask me, where do you work? You work in Washington, D.C.? You work at the White House? People say to me, the first question actually they say is when they find out I work at the White House, they say, oh, are you in the Secret Service? And when I say, no, I'm not in the Secret Service, the next question they ask is, what's it like to work at the White House? I've boiled down kind of three key things I've learned in the past 3.5 years from working at the White House. and they revolve around the topics of pretty simple categories of people, places, and things. The first thing that I've learned in working at the White House for the past 3 years is that people are replaceable. The White House and Washington, D.C. in general are transient places, meaning that people aren't in fixed positions for a long period of time. Think about it. The president is reelected every 4 or 8 years, members of the House of Representatives every 2, senators 6, and so on. Political appointees are coming and going. The executive office of the president in the next roughly 15 months will completely turn over. And no matter how smart you are, how talented you are, how funny you are, there will always be a new person or a new group waiting to come in behind you. The lesson I've learned from spending the past 15 years in Washington is that many of us in our positions, just when we think we aren't replaceable, we in fact are. In fact, right now, there's roughly a couple hundred graduating 8th graders across Northeast Ohio who are waiting to come take your places as the Holy Name High School freshman class and ultimately soon to be senior class. Right now, as you're chomping at the bit to start your careers in a college or university somewhere close, there is a graduating class of seniors at that college and university that you will be backfilling, and so on and so forth with graduate school, medical school, law school, and so on. My point is that someone was in your seats before you, case in point. Someone will be in your seats after you. Consider yourself the caretakers of the institutions you're in for a short amount of time, if only for just a very short amount of time. The reputation and standing of the school or institution that you belong to will far outlast the affiliation that you directly have in it. The second observation I have to share with you about working in Washington for the past 3 years is about places and the uniqueness of places. Let me be blunt. Where you sit matters. In the West Wing of the White House, probably the second most iconic room next to the Oval Office is called the Cabinet Room. It's on TV pretty often. The president holds his regular cabinet meetings and senior administration meetings there. A brief history about the room is in 1970, Richard Nixon, out of his own personal funds, spent $4,000 to buy the oval table for that room. And if you look at any picture of that room, something unique stood out to me after walking in there and seeing it a few times. And that's the president always sits at the center of the table, opposite the vice president, and not at the head of the table. Now, why is that? I found this very odd. Why is the president sitting in the middle, not at the head of the table? He's the guy in charge. Now, the president has many formal and informal roles in government. He's the leader of the executive branch, he's the commander-in-chief, he's a decision maker, he's the senior diplomat, spokesperson, and so on. But think about the portrait of the Last Supper, if you can think about it for a moment. Where was Jesus seated? Was he seated at the head of the table, or was he seated in the middle? The point of mentioning this is because as you embark on a new chapter in your life, regardless of what school you go to, what degree you obtain, or what name your family history may have, remember that as you get older and you're in a position to convene, the place you sit around the table matters. And when you sit in the middle and you gather people around the table, you represent that you are part of them. And your leadership style is that of showing by example instead of by command. Think about how you sit in a classroom. And as you go into college, you get to pick your own seats when you walk in. When you talk about where you sit, are you going to be one of the people who's not afraid to sit in the front because you might get called on? Or are you someone who wants to sit in the back and fade into the wallpaper, as admittedly I used to do from time to time? The point is, where you sit matters. When you're at the table, be in a position to convene and lead and bring people together, as Christ did and as the president sits at the middle of the table, regardless of political affiliation. The last category of people, places is things. Every day, tens of thousands of people either call or email the White House. They send letters and so on. There's an office dedicated to working through this at the White House. It's called the Office of Presidential Correspondence. The American public doesn't hear what happens to the tens of thousands of letters that come in on a weekly basis, except when the president refers to them in some type of State of the Union or a public speech of some form. On occasion, I've had the honor of reviewing some of these letters of correspondence that apply to national security matters that I might be working on. And almost every piece of correspondence that I've read, these are the things that I'm talking about, have a very frank, plain-spoken, and above all, commonality of being written very passionately. When I've read or seen these letters or emails, it's made me think about my own advocacy for things that I'm passionate about in my personal life and that I want to commit my thoughts to pen and paper on. When was the last time you, graduating seniors, took a few minutes to write to a family or friend and tell them how you felt about a particular issue. You don't have to write letters to the White House on public policy or international affairs issues for committing your thoughts and feelings to paper. You can do that for a lot of different reasons. And if your handwriting and penmanship is as bad as mine, it's probably better that it's typed and not handwritten. Seniors, as you leave here tonight and as the thrill of graduation starts to fade in the next days and weeks, take a moment to write a few words to your friends and families and teachers about what they have meant to you. And anyone else who's helped you in the past 4 years grow, develop, mature. Don't hesitate to thank them, even quickly. In the New Testament, the Gospel of Luke 17 tells us that the story of Jesus healing 10 men who came to him who were afflicted by leprosy and begged for healing at his footsteps. Verse 15 goes on to say, one of them, when he saw he had healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice, and threw himself at Jesus' feet and said to him, "Thank you, Lord." Jesus turned to him and said, quote, "Were not all 10 healed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to praise God except for you?" And the person didn't know what to say, and Jesus responded to him and said, "Raise and go. Your faith has healed you." As you leave here tonight, don't be one of the 9 who forgets to come back, who forgets to say thank you to the institution that invested in you. For the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. Take a lesson from me and honor those who have invested their time, talents, and love into your 4 years at Holy Name, and will continue to do so after you leave. Thank them, respect them, and most importantly, remember that in 17 years from tonight, it's very likely that one of you will have spent a decade in Washington working in the halls of government. One of you will have spent 4 more years working in an administration at the White House. One of you will have a position of importance somewhere in our nation's capital related to policy and international affairs. And one of you will be asked to come home and give the commencement address to the graduating class at Holy Name. The last piece I'll say is that when that time happens of the graduating class of 2015, I really hope I'm sitting in the back and watching that commencement address. Thank you, seniors. Best of luck, and God bless you.